Today on the podcast, we are thrilled to welcome Peter Davos, a visionary educator, global academic leader, and the founder of Hale Education Group, the GCC's premier independent educational consultancy, guiding its students to the top universities across US, UK, Europe, and Canada. Peter's academic journey is nothing short of inspiring. He is Phi Beta Kappa graduate with the double major from Johns Hopkins University. Then he spent a transformative year abroad at the London School of Economics, then went on to earn master's degree from both Oxford University and Harvard, where he graduated as class marshal, first in the class. He has further distinguished himself by specialized training from UCLA and IECA, reinforcing his commitment to the student development and educational excellence. Since founding the Hale in 2012, Peter has led the organization into the incredible heights. Through Hale's holistic one-on-one approach to admissions counseling, students have earned spots at over 200 leading universities worldwide, collectively securing more than $70 million in scholarship. Hale's mission is rooted in the belief that every student deserves guidance to find their best fit path. And Peter has made that vision a reality for thousands. Peter's contribution to education have been recognized at the highest levels. In 2020, he was awarded the Sheikh Zayed, the Inspirer Prize for advancing higher education in UAE. He currently serves as Chief Judge and School Inspector for the Dubai Sports Council, Sheikh Hamdan bin Mohammed Order of Merit for Schools, and he has been featured voice in more than 100 media appearances around the world. Having lived Dubai since 2010, Peter continued to shape the future of education in the region with unwavering passion and purpose. And that's exactly why this episode belongs on She Is Well, because when our children do well, she is well. Welcome, Peter.
Hello, Dr. Bushra. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, and thank you for coming. The moment you accepted my invite, I was really happy. So, after reading the Johns Hopkins, Harvard, Oxford, I'm myself also impressed. So let's talk about your personal background and the educational journey.
Well, I think it starts with my parents.
Right.
So I'm a first-generation college graduate. Both my parents were immigrants from Greece to the U.S. Neither of them had the opportunity to go to university. My father grew up in the aftermath of World War II in southern Greece in very difficult conditions, abject poverty, no running water, no electricity, during the onset of the Civil War there. So his formal schooling ended with elementary school, and he decided when he was quite young that he wanted to migrate to the U.S. So he got on a boat to chase his dream when he was 28 years old. He learned English before he came to the U.S., and although he never had access to formal education, that was something that was a priority for him to provide for his children. So I remember from a very young age, he was extremely supportive. He was not an educated person, but he was a curious person. He loved to read. I remember he used to have a digital pen where he would scan a word in a book and it would show up on the little screen, the definition.
That's nice.
We shared a love for reading.
Yeah.
And then when I was in middle school, he decided to enroll me in a very elite New England prep school that is about 150 years old. Wow. Being from Boston, the hub of U.S. education, home to MIT and Harvard, I had access to a lot of opportunities there. That high school was the first step, I'd say, in my true advancement. And he used to support any educational endeavor I could imagine. So even when I was in high school, I would take the train, the Red Line, from Braintree to Harvard Square. It took about 50 minutes to take classes at Harvard after high school.
Wow.
And he would come and pick me up sometimes 10:30 at night after working a very long day. And I was just very aware from a very young age that education was a privilege. It's not something that anyone should take for granted. The neighborhood I grew up in, my friends from the neighborhood, one went to the Marines, one went to become a fireman, one went to become a car salesman, one went to go work in a plumbing supply warehouse.
Right.
So even in high school, I knew that going to university was not something that was a foregone conclusion for everybody.
Yeah.
So that gave me a lot of awareness and appreciation for the gift of education. And I knew that, since I had friends who were working quite hard, from 9 to 5 or beyond, that I would, have to take my education seriously. Otherwise, it would be a squandered opportunity. And that's not something that's part of my value system.
Right. So it started from a generation before you. It was your father's dream which went on. Amazing. Most of the time this happens, parents follow what, children follow what parents are dreaming. Yeah. So you went Johns Hopkins, Oxford, and Harvard. So how you were able to get into that, and tell me about your experience there.
So I always thought and still believe that if you study what you're passionate about, then you should excel. So I was very fortunate to get into Johns Hopkins University, which is, as you know, very famous for medicine.
Yeah, of course.
But it also has a phenomenal history program and writing seminars and international relations. And I didn't know too much about the university before going there. But I can tell you, other than my family, it was the most transformative experience in my life.
Amazing.
I got very lucky to end up at the right place. So at Hopkins, for the first time, I found a nurturing environment which really fueled my curiosity. I found professors that really cared about me. I still, to this day, 29 years after enrolling, I'm still in very close contact with two of my professors.
Wow.
We have lunch together when I go back. But it was that ecosystem of people. Also, my fellow students, I came into contact with tremendous diversity. So if I look at my best friends from college days, they were all like me. The parents were immigrants from Iraq, from India, from Pakistan, from Egypt, from Armenia. We all had that kind of hunger to excel. And I also had access for the first time to subjects that I could pick and choose, that I could pour myself into.
Nice.
And I thought that, well, if I can chart my own educational journey, I should be able to excel. And that's exactly what happened. And Hopkins really made me into the person I am today and set the foundation for all future achievement, academic and otherwise. So now I get to share that, gift with others, which is extremely fulfilling.
Yeah, exactly. We are lucky you're in, Dubai is a place of the diversity also. I think this is a place where people are connecting from my part of the world, your part of the world. It's amazing. And we are lucky to have you in Dubai, actually. So you have been observer for the alumni interviewer for Johns Hopkins. First thing, tell our viewers, what does that mean? And then let's explain, how's your experience?
Very good. So I think when you apply to top U.S. universities, you have to understand that it's a very different process from other countries.
Yeah.
It's not strictly academic, test score based. In some countries, you take a set of tests. How you perform on that test determines what you can study and where you can study it.
Exactly.
In the U.S., the universities really care about your grades, your academic performance, but they also care about your character.
Right.
They care about your contributions to society, social impact, volunteerism, leadership, and all of these things come together to form a picture for the admissions officers as to what potential contributions can you make to the campus and to society as a whole.
Right.
So typically the last, step of the assessment process is the interview, especially at leading private universities like Ivy League schools, where an alumnus like myself would interview students, candidates, applicants.
Right.
And, I did that for 16 years, interviewed hundreds of applicants.
Wow.
And what was interesting to me, and I started when I was quite young.
And you did it in this region.
I did it first in Boston, right after
fine.
I had graduated, and then continued here in Dubai.
Right. Yeah.
So what was really interesting for me is that the very high percentage of the students could not properly communicate their motivation for applying to the university in concrete terms.
Right.
So for too many students, Johns Hopkins represented an ideal or the top program in biomedical engineering, but they didn't have anything but a superficial understanding of why they wanted to be there.
Yeah.
And that was something that didn't outright disqualify them, but didn't help them.
Oh. And they wouldn't have understood why.
Right. If you can't understand why you belong at a university in terms of communicating the culture, the traditions, the curriculum, the professors, the infrastructure, and that university is rejecting 95 out of 100 students that apply, or 90 out of 100 students, regardless of your achievements, you don't, have a spot there.
Yeah.
So that was my first exposure to understanding the gaps in knowledge that existed between, candidate students who are applying to these leading universities and essentially their preparation.
Right.
Because these students didn't know how to answer the simplest question effectively because no one had told them, no one had prepped them. Right. So it was interesting to me to see that consistent gap in knowledge. And what else was very interesting is that as an interviewer, I am not an academic assessor. I'm not there to assess the students' grade and test scores. That is, a job for the admissions office.
Yeah.
I'm there to assess the students' character and their intellectual curiosity.
Right.
So
authenticity.
The authenticity. Right. And it was really interesting because the most memorable interviews I had were with students who energized me with their love for learning. And I think that is something you cannot fabricate on an application when you're sitting one-on-one.
Exactly.
So I would just be drawn into a world of whatever neuroscience or subjects I had no knowledge about, but they were magnetic in terms of, their knowledge, their passion. It was electric.
Yeah.
And those were the students that without me even having to look at their transcripts and grades, I knew were going to get in.
They're going to. I have one patient, she was PCO patient, and she's a teenager. And the moment I told them that your diagnosis is PCO, the mother and the daughter were very upset. And they told me during the discussion that she's somebody studying pharmacy and somebody who want to pursue pharmacy. And I told her that PCO doesn't have a lot, so maybe you're the one. And trust me, the discussion ended. So probably when you're talking about the passion, that kind of passion, that maybe I will be the one who will do some medication for the PCO.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that kind of drive is
important,
really important and critical to success. And I think something, unfortunately, that we see less and less of now, especially with the corona pandemic and its impact on young people, it's sapped a lot of the energy out of teenagers.
That time was really critical. Like there was so much isolation, and especially in Dubai, because we were isolated expats, so it affected a lot.
Yeah.
Since you are in the forum of She's Well, there's so many mothers, and they would love to know that what could be the early habits which can lay the foundation for the success in future.
So I can only speak from my own personal experience, as I'm not an early year specialist, but I have 3 children. God has blessed me with 3 kids.
Yeah.
An 8-year-old daughter, a 5-year-old son, and a 9-month-old daughter. So I can tell you, for example, modeling positive behavior and sharing, positive experiences.
Yeah.
I drive my daughter to school every morning, and our first stop every single morning is the library.
Wow.
So we will go straight to the library. My daughter will pick out a book. We'll read it together. Sometimes she reads one page, I read the other. But that is part of our culture, our value system at home. We read. We love to read. I remember every time I take my kids to the Big Bad Wolf Shop, they get excited. It's like they won the lottery and now we can go and get whatever book they want. I'm an avid scuba diver, and scuba diving is actually my current outlet for my learning, and I've earned 30 different specializations in scuba.
Wow.
So my daughter has seen, for example, my commitment, to that endeavor. And she, at 8 years old, the youngest age possible, has undergone her PADI SEAL training. She can tell you every piece of equipment that I own. This is the regulator, that's the octopus. So again, I think it's about modeling positive behavior, and I think it's about whatever the young person is interested in, nurturing that interest and providing fuel for the fire there, for sure.
Right. So reading very important, and beside that, we have to see what interests them, and we have to support them in their interest. Yeah.
Correct.
Amazing. So the moms, they want to nurture curiosity early on. So what they have to do so they can fuel later motivation?
Yeah, I think it's very important to let, the children take the lead and for the parents to provide, the support system for those children, because sometimes parents obviously have their own desires and interests and academic backgrounds, and sometimes in some cultures as well, there's an imposition, for example, of the love for math. But if the student is really creative and loves art, I know with, again, my own daughter, I'm there to support her as long as she's doing something productive and learning and applying herself and improving. It doesn't matter to me whether it's math or art or
Exactly.
biology. So I think, we're very blessed as well that the schooling systems here have lots of fantastic facilities, after school activities. My daughter does chemical engineering when she's 8 years old.
Oh my gosh, she's
yes,
8.
Yes. In
Wow.
addition to karate
That's so
and
nice.
ballet.
You
But
see.
she gets so excited to mix the chemicals, and I made it
Wow.
green and blue, and then we buy the chemistry set at home,
Wow, that's
and
so
we go
nice.
through that exercise
That's
together.
amazing. Kids are lucky to have daddy like this. Yeah.
I hope so.
That's nice. And, I will talk about my culture, and my question is about that also. Sometimes, and you talk about encouraging art. So in my house, this was something that children has to be either doctor or engineer. So we were 2 doctors and then 2 engineers. And then there was a big fight because my younger to that one, we are 7, she wanted to become graphic designer. And it took really long time my parents to understand, because she was a rebel, and finally she's a graphic designer.
Amazing.
And she did very good. So sometime, especially from my culture, because you're seeing people from all cultures, parents could be the greatest obstacle. So any messages for those parents?
Yes, please get out of the way.
Yeah.
Support your children.
Yeah.
Don't make their journeys more difficult. I've seen so many students that have come to me that are in university that were essentially forced into engineering by the parents.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you the exact pattern, which occurs over and over again. The student will go into engineering despite, his or her, will.
Yeah.
They will get by in the first year.
Yeah.
The second year of study, they really struggle. The third year,
Right.
they flame out because they can't handle those complex topics. And then finally, the parents are compelled to accept that the son or daughter is not hardwired to be an engineer.
Yeah.
But at that point, you've lost a lot of time and obviously,
Energy.
yes, energy.
Motivation, a lot.
It's very disheartening for the student to say, Mom, I was telling you this
Yeah.
for so long. And now that I failed out, now we have to pivot and go to study poetry or whatever it
Exactly.
is that I want to study.
Yeah, I think, it's very, very important, because children may be gifted for something, and then, going that process, which may be discouraging for them. So what are the common pitfalls where parents should be aware of, and how can they avoid them?
Well, I think one of the other things that I see a lot is that parents sometimes are putting too much pressure on the children, and it comes from a good place in terms of they want the best for their kids, but they don't understand that the approach that they take, because I've heard so many times as well, if my son doesn't get into an Ivy League school, I'm going to send him to India, for example. But no, you're not,
Yeah.
because he's not in an Indian curriculum school.
Yes, exactly.
He can't, acclimate to the culture there, right? The level of competitiveness is also very high. So when a student hears that, that's not very encouraging in my opinion. So the parents want the best for the kids. The parents think, of course, I've given them a much better life. I've worked so hard. I've put them in the private school. But you also have to manage expectations. And I think there's this disconnect in expectations simply because there's not that knowledge there. The parents equate Ivy League with the only universities worth going to, but they may not understand how difficult it is statistically to secure admission to one of those universities.
Yeah.
So I think taking a realistic view of the student, being data-driven in terms of their academic achievement, and having an honest understanding of what is their potential,
Right.
that's where we have to start.
Amazing, yeah. Yeah, and this also happens when they get rejection in application process. So how they should view rejection process?
Rejection is part of the process.
Yeah.
And it's part of life.
Yeah.
And I really, it makes me quite sad to see how students deal with rejection.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're going to apply to 12 universities, you should be getting rejected from some of them.
Right.
It's only the very privileged few that apply early decision, early action to their first choice and then
Right.
get in. If you are used to a certain set of outcomes just based on your expectations,
Right.
then that's not going to set you up for success later.
Yeah.
What happens when you get rejected for your first job, or you're trying to get into Goldman Sachs, or
Yeah.
your preferred residency if you're a doctor? Life is not about, obviously, the setback, in my opinion, the setbacks you face,
Yeah.
but how you react to those setbacks.
Right.
And are you going to be anti-fragile and take, rejection as, motivation to work harder?
Yeah.
Or is it going to crush you? I can tell you, I had a case study of a student from Jumeirah College 4 or 5 years ago. The student was in high school. Brown University, which is an Ivy League school, was his
Yeah.
top choice. He applied as a high school student to Brown, was rejected. He applied as a first-year transfer student to Brown, was rejected. Then we helped him. I'm not saying it's just because we helped him,
Yeah.
but we played a role. And then on his third attempt, his second transfer attempt, he was accepted.
Yeah.
He graduated from Brown, got his
Wow.
bachelor's degree. So that is a student that took rejection in stride and said, you know what, this isn't the only opportunity. I still have
Yeah.
2 more chances. And God bless him. He's a
Yeah.
better person for having gone through that
Wow.
than just having gotten in at the beginning and taking it for granted.
Because even the failure is a process which makes you a better person and puts you in a place in terms of wisdom where you were never before.
Correct. And
So-
if you're not failing, you're not trying
Yeah.
hard enough.
Yeah, exactly. If I remember my career, I don't know, I remember more failures
Yes.
than, because success comes just one time. But failures are so repeated,
Yes.
even doing some surgery, and then one day, just one time, you become successful.
Yes.
That's the thing.
And if I could
Yeah.
say too, I remember when I was in elementary school, I was telling everybody I was going to go to Harvard.
Yeah.
And, I didn't get into Harvard for my undergraduate studies,
Yeah.
even after having taken classes there as a high school student.
Yeah.
And I was upset for, 5-10 minutes. I got over it. But then when I applied again for my master's degree, my second master's degree, not only did I get in, but I ended
Yeah.
up first in my class. I got many awards.
Yeah,
My name is
amazing.
now on the library wall forever.
Wow.
Right? So the second time around, well, it's a fact. It's true.
Yeah.
I earned it.
Yeah,
But
no, that's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Your CV is amazing. So, maybe it's the
Yes.
environment.
Yes.
Maybe parents, maybe we should teach this
Yes.
thing to our children from the beginning, that failure is a process.
Correct.
Sometimes some patients come who are new to Dubai and they say, too much stress, my PCO due to stress. So I always tell them there's a TED talk upside of the stress.
Yes.
So I say the failure, stress, they are there for some meaning. And for me, I always say I love chaos because after those all failures and things, you are at a better position.
Correct.
So of course, we should teach our kids from the beginning that it's part of the process.
And I think it's also about reference points. So for
Yeah.
a very long time, for over a decade, I've been going to Lebanon, and we have many, many students from Lebanon that have gotten into top
Yeah.
university, Harvard, MIT.
Yeah.
And the clientele, predominantly in Lebanon, that we have is extremely affluent. The wealth I've seen in the Lebanese homes
Wow.
there, I haven't even seen in Dubai. And I was asking myself, because those students there, very well acclimated, very respectful, very healthy, very emotionally well adjusted. And I was wondering to myself, I was asking myself, how come these students have a higher level of mental wellness and well-being than the ones in Dubai? Because they come from similar income demographics,
Yeah.
or an even higher one.
Yeah.
And I came to my own conclusion that because these students go to school, and not everybody is from the same demographic.
Yeah.
Their cousins are not from the same demographic.
Right.
They have so many different reference points that they know how privileged they are, and they don't take it for granted. Whereas I think here in Dubai, sometimes everybody's going to university, everybody's at least, upper middle class.
Yeah.
And then the kids, where are you going for the holiday? I'm going to Maldives. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, the first time I went to Maldives, I was like, that was a dream for
Yeah.
decades.
Yeah.
So I think making sure that students have access to those different perspectives and viewpoints to keep them grounded
Yeah.
is incredibly important, to get them out of the Dubai bubble a little bit, because
Yeah, exactly.
things here are not like they are back home for any of us.
Exactly. I was also commenting one time that my son, my both kids, at some point they ask, Mommy, are we good enough? Because they are seeing everybody, like husband, wife, both earning around all the kids in the good school. So you're right. Like I remember from my childhood, I saw some people who were not performing, and I used to thank God that I'm not like them. Here, they don't have to see such people. So they get probably more stressed.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. So now let's talk about what separates the high achieving students. Probably we are talking about the conformist
Yes.
from the truly brilliant and exceptional and probably not conformist.
Yes, I think you have many students that perform exceptionally well on exams, on tests,
Yeah.
top marks. But to possess a true love for learning, where you initiate and you seek out proactively opportunities to learn on your own,
Yeah.
where you dive deeper into the content, where you're not satisfied with just what the school is offering you, and to throw yourself into that true love for learning is what separates the high achievers from the ones that really excel in the university admissions process. And again, that element comes out in the recommendations from the teachers.
Right.
So typically you'll get 2 teacher recommendations, a counselor recommendation, and then in the interview, right?
Wow.
So going beyond what's simply expected academically, going beyond learning as a series of high marks or exams that you have to achieve, it shouldn't be a task. It should be a passion.
Yeah. That's, I think, in the US application process that gets prominent, but not everywhere it is like that.
Correct.
From where I am coming, it's
Yes.
just the scores.
Yes.
So you may find all kind of doctors around, and you may find non-doctors very smart around. So probably in US application process, you are saved if you're a smart, not conformist,
Yes.
and exceptional and brilliant.
Yes.
That's amazing. So since you see student profiles, so what are the most glaring gaps you see in the profiles?
So unfortunately, students don't read as much as they should.
Yeah.
Especially with the onset of ChatGPT, the last few years, students have lost the ability to think critically.
Yeah.
And their English composition skills, in terms of writing even a simple essay, have really disappeared.
Oh,
So
because of
it's-
the comfort.
Because of the over-reliance
Yeah.
on AI,
Yeah.
essentially that is the first stop.
Actually, that should get better.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a powerful tool if you use it
Yeah.
effectively.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's become a convenient portal to
Yeah.
outsource the work. And it's a huge problem in the schools.
Right.
Half the time, the teachers are, running, the assignments through AI checkers. But if you are getting dependent on ChatGPT to answer
Yeah.
all the questions for you, it's like exercise, right? Your
Yeah.
brain is going to atrophy.
Exactly.
So I think making sure that students read paper, not just digitally, unplug, right, and emphasize communication more generally, not just composition, but there's also been, a shift in how students want to interact with others.
Yeah.
WhatsApp, digitally, all on the screen. You need to have, human interaction. You need to be able to develop your EQ, your emotional intelligence, which is
Yeah.
a greater indicator of success in life than IQ.
Exactly.
But if you're not actively cultivating, those, endeavors, then you're not going to advance.
Right. ChatGPT, I find it very interesting when you're alone. You can have a discussion with the ChatGPT. And I think if used correctly, it can add rather than harm.
Correct.
So, maybe we have to, that should be part of curriculum in the school, how to use the
Yes.
ChatGPT. Probably this is the high time. So sometimes back we heard that SAT will not count.
Yes.
So now do the SAT matters, and what is their importance in the current landscape?
Right. So with the corona pandemic, all the universities in the US went SAT optional because a lot of students globally could not sit the exam.
Yeah.
But this was disastrous for many universities because the SAT
Yeah.
exam still is a very powerful tool for predicting the student success in university.
Yeah.
So almost every single Ivy League university now has reinstated the requirement for SATs. Even schools like the University of Georgia, which is not a leading university, have
Right.
reinstated the requirement. So students need to be aware that this is an important part of the admissions process in the US. This is the one part of the process where you have full transparency and visibility as to what the expectations are.
Yeah.
Universities do publish the accepted scores of students every year. So it matters, and it's largely a function of how hard does a student work to prepare for that exam.
Yeah.
A good score is not going to get you into university, but a bad score can exclude you from getting into university.
Right. So if somebody hasn't done it,
Yes.
still they can get into the university.
But not the most selective ones. You still have NYU, for example,
Right.
which is test optional, but for Harvard, for Columbia, for, Penn.
need that.
You need it, yes.
Perfect. So, Dubai culture diversity, parents might have come from the traditional educational system from Pakistan, India. But still, people want their kids to go to UK, US. So when they start this application process, so what are the most common misconceptions?
Well, I think the most common misconception is that you can wait until you're applying to think about the application.
Yeah.
So in the US, you have a system which assesses all 4 years of your high school record inside the classroom, outside the classroom, summers, extracurriculars, down to the number of weeks per year and hours per week you're involved.
And that's more important last 4 years.
That's it.
Not the before one.
No,
Yeah.
but all 4 years will be taken into consideration.
Yeah.
In the UK and in Canada, you have certain academic prerequisites for courses, for
Yeah.
majors. Now, if you don't have further maths and you're taking A levels, for example, you can't apply to LSE for economics.
Okay.
So if a student doesn't know that in advance,
Exactly.
and then you're too late.
Yeah.
So I think if you have a high school student that is seeking to study abroad anywhere, they need to be aware of what are the factors in admission in advance.
Yeah.
Well, how many times I've heard, I didn't know that. I didn't know that was important. I didn't know I was
Yeah.
supposed to do that. You don't want to have a knowledge gap halfway through the process. Applying effectively to these global universities does not start 3 months or 6 months before the deadlines.
Yeah.
Ideally, you start thinking about it years before,
Yeah.
so you can prepare adequately and make the right decisions.
Yeah. See, we are also from traditional system, me and my husband. We contacted you 2019 probably.
Yes.
Because we understood that maybe we won't be the complete help for our kids. So now you talk about the student presenting themselves authentically.
Yes.
And that could be perceived. So how it is important and, like what they can do for that.
Okay, I think especially for the U.S., that authenticity is oftentimes the defining factor in
Yeah.
terms of whether a student can get in or not, because you have 80% of students applying to top U.S. universities with the same grades and test scores. So then it becomes, an understanding as to the holistic essence of the student as a whole, the individual. So you cannot fake, for example, a weekly commitment to social impact endeavor, like volunteering at Jod's Inclusion, right?
Yeah.
Or riding with the disabled. Or if you've launched an initiative which has, this is again, all case studies of my kids, which has collected 40 tons of e-waste, which you have, done over the course of 4 years.
Yeah.
That's a real commitment. So you want to be able to quantify your impact, your commitment, whatever you can do. That's not something you can fake, right? So I think, again, it's a matter of, and that's what we do at Hale Education, is try to channel students towards outlets for their interests, academic and extracurricular. So, pursuing a passion project that the student ideates and then follows through with, executes, and then scales is incredibly important. And I have so many examples I could share with you about that.
And actually, passion shows up. You cannot fake it. You cannot hire somebody to do something and then show that.
Correct.
That's really, actually, I have a passion project also, educating women. But when we started coming to Hale, probably our educational system didn't encourage all those things. But I just felt that, I want to do something also. And then, this educating women about their health and thing became my passion project also. And I think it's important for our mental health also.
Absolutely.
So you find this outlet, even not getting admission to the college for healthy mental well-being also.
Yes.
I mean, you need those outlets also.
And it's not only a personal project, your project has impacted
Exactly.
thousands of others.
Exactly. And it gives me happiness. My
Yes.
patient think that they are getting answers immediately on the WhatsApp, but they don't understand its meaningful purpose of life for me. So it's like it's my passion project. It just became my passion project, yeah. Though I don't need admissions anymore. Yeah. So you talk about the holistic admission.
Yes.
So especially people coming from our culture, the Pakistan
Yes.
and India, they need to understand why it's crucial. So let's talk more about the holistic admission.
Yes. So again, especially in the U.S., they are admitting you as an entire person,
Yeah.
not just as an academic.
Yeah.
So U.S. universities in particular care about, how you spend your free time.
Right.
They care about leadership. They care about social impact because they want to help you become a better person, not just a better student. They care about your music, your debating, your volunteerism. And I think all of that is part of personal growth and development, because when you go to, having studied in the UK and the US personally, I lived through both systems. And I saw in the US that there was much greater infrastructure for you to develop as a human being, as a contributing member of society, and as a future leader. Where in the UK, for example, the emphasis was teaching you proficiency in an academic subject.
Yeah.
That was their mission. That's their value system. That is their, kind of admissions criteria. But it's a very different philosophy. Now, I think that obviously the world is changing. Obviously, it's changing every day. But you need to be equipped to succeed in life, not only to have proficiency in an academic subject,
Exactly.
because when it comes to getting hired or, you have to be able to have strong interpersonal skills.
Exactly.
You have to have, the ability to overcome adversity, work in teams, et cetera. So I think that, kind of approach towards personal development is extremely relevant.
Actually, also, like we doctors, there are so many doctors in Dubai also. You're very right. It's not just a degree which gets you hired. There's much more than that. So like it's happening, like maybe in the future with the saturation, maybe US already started selecting and nurturing those staff, which probably in the future everywhere it will be. So now you were talking about the extracurricular activities and the personal interests, which can influence the application process in the US. So let's talk more about that.
Yeah, I think, again, the activity should be a reflection of the student's interests.
Yeah.
So some people think you must have debate. No, you don't. You don't need to have MUN. I get the question, do I have to do sports? No, but you should be pouring yourself into activities that enrich your learning, that show different aspects of your personality, and hopefully positively impact the community around you. And I think the most impressive extracurricular activities are individual initiatives that students start on their own, that start as an idea, and then that they scale. So I have a student that has developed a personal finance literacy initiative that he administers in person to low-wage laborers here in Dubai to educate them about budgeting, savings, and credit scores. And, that has evolved actually to a digital platform, which allows, these individuals to access digitally, but also, to find out which bank or exchange house is offering the best rates to send money back home. It allows them to develop.
That's very practical.
Yes, to develop an AI-powered resume to, basically hopefully have better, job prospects. It empowers them, to be aware of their rights under UAE labor law. So that's a tool.
That's really nice.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And very creative. If some student came up with this idea and we can see a leader. So now admission process. So what part parents are most surprised to discover?
Yeah, I think how competitive it actually is to get into the top universities. In the US, you have universities that, let's take the top 20 universities. All of them have single-digit acceptance rates. MIT, there are years that go by where there's not a single student from the entire UAE that gets into MIT. Caltech is a very small school with less than 1,000 undergraduates. There are going to be less than 40 international students in the whole world that go to
much
Caltech every
competition.
year. So I think, kind of understanding just how competitive the landscape is important. Also, emphasizing qualitative aspects of the universities over just rankings here because, of course, there's a knowledge gap on behalf of parents. There's an over-reliance on rankings. So QS said that this university is ranked number 5. It must be better than number 8.
Yeah.
But no, that's not how it works. The university is a home for the student for all 4 years, if they're in the US, or 3 in England. They have to be in the right environment.
Yeah.
The right campus, the right location, the right student body, the right curriculum, the right culture.
Everything should be fit.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because otherwise the student's not going to succeed
Yeah.
if they're unhappy.
Yeah.
So parents not understanding that is very important, that they
Yeah.
should be applying to the right universities for them.
Yeah.
So that's another misconception.
So it's not end of the world like the ranking thing. So it could be, that's very right.
And there's plenty of
Yeah.
universities that have great programs,
Yeah.
that are also going to provide you with the proper ecosystem to thrive.
Exactly, yeah, that's very right. When we were in US, so I was liking all those lounges and everything. But then at the end, I told my boys that, see, I might have not been there, but wherever I was studying, I was doing the best. So that's my Harvard.
Yes,
That's my
exactly.
place because that was growing me, what I became today. So you're very right. Like we don't have to go for the ranking all the time. So let's define university acceptance success in today's world.
Yeah, so I think that, again, this concept of fit is extremely important.
Yeah.
If you go to a university where you can thrive personally, intellectually, and also professionally as well, I think that's another thing that too many times students and parents look at the university in isolation from the opportunities that are available after the student graduates.
Right.
So you have to be able to measure success through those different perspectives.
Yeah.
Because I even had a student, he's at Yale, he came to me, he said, I'm miserable at Yale. I want to go to Georgetown, where his friends are and, which he's visited. Yale is a better school.
Yeah, of
but
course.
if you don't belong there, it doesn't matter. And you're not happy every single day.
That's sad, actually.
Yes.
Like, so what parents should do, they should go before and check our student. So they should participate. So they should listen to the student before getting admission. So, but they can screen this part before?
Well, I think it should be a collaborative process. And I think if you can visit, fantastic.
Yeah.
But now you have access to virtual tours. You have access to admissions presentations. You have access to third-party websites, which give you a good overview of the university. But do your due diligence.
Yeah.
Too many times, parents and students alike don't do proper deep dives into the university to understand the, curriculum, the setting, the campus culture, the location. And once the more informed you are, the better decision you'll make in this process, because you should be willing to exclude some big name universities because they're not right for you.
Yeah. But do you think TOR is enough to decide, because in TOR, most of the people are from outside, and then there's a one representative from the university. And I don't think so that one person can give us the judgment.
Yeah.
So what should be the way to screen?
Yeah, I think a tour is
Being
part of...
mother,
Yeah. Well, it's so funny because sometimes I'll have students who come back from tours and I love this university. And it was a sunny day and the tour guide was really engaging and fun. So they said, this is where they want to be. But no, you have to be able to, again, parse through all the information, the observations. I think there is no substitute for visiting in person if you can.
Yeah.
Because you really get a feel for the vibe, the energy. And I've been to universities where I couldn't wait for the tour to be over. This is just not for me.
Yeah.
But others really, drew me in and kind of got me excited. But it's part of your homework and your research, your due diligence.
Right. And sometimes it's luck.
Yeah.
But still, it's not the end of the world.
Correct.
Students can have more chances. So one thing we should understand that we don't have to just give up or we should find ways, yeah?
Correct.
So now we are talking about the competitive nature of the admission. What could be the unique strategies where students can stand out?
Yeah, I think you have to understand first, what are the factors of admission?
Yeah.
What are the expectations for different universities? First, you have to be informed.
Yeah.
Then you have to be receptive to guidance, like what we give at Hale Education. Then you have to act on that guidance.
Yeah.
And typically that's a multi-year process, whether it's the top universities in the UK or the US or in Canada. So to take a multi-year view and approach to this process, to see, essentially to take the long view is unbelievably important. Because what we can do is we can provide examples and case studies of successful students from the UAE for the last 13 years. So that can serve as an inspiration and to basically decipher what you believe you should be doing from what you actually should be doing.
Yeah.
You need some kind of objective and realistic filter to communicate to the students, the expectations.
Right. So now college admission process has evolved in recent years. Especially for international students, especially students from UAE. So can you explain that, how it has evolved?
Yeah, so we've seen an explosion in the application numbers to top U.S. universities. In particular, it's gotten statistically much more difficult to get into universities that even 10 years ago had acceptance rates that were 3 times what they are today.
Yeah.
So we see, for example, Northeastern University in Boston, which is a good school, but parents are shocked to find out that it has a 6% acceptance rate.
Oh.
That's an acceptance rate on par with Ivy League universities.
Yeah.
Or NYU having received in excess of 140,000 applications.
Oh.
It's mind-blowing. Or USC, University of Southern California, which used to be derisively referred to as the University of Spoiled Children, now having a 9% acceptance rate. So you've seen an explosion since the onset of the pandemic in the number of applications, continuing a trend that really started about 20 years ago because you have an increasingly global applicant pool. There are just more people from around the world that are applying. Right. So I think that it's definitely become much more competitive. The expectations are higher. And the stakes are also higher.
Yeah, it's getting more difficult. So, but why after Corona time? Just wondering.
The main factor in that was the elimination of the SATs.
Oh.
Because students no longer had to take this exam.
But still it contributes. So even applying without SAT, that will not be giving them any edge, yeah?
Right. So now we're shifting back. And by the way, the SAT exam is a great filter for excluding candidates that really don't have any business in applying there.
Right.
So now that we've seen the reintroduction of SATs, the requirements, I think you'll see some of those numbers drop again.
Okay, what emerging trends you foresee in the global higher education?
So I think it's interesting because you see different waves and shifts. I think that you will always have a demand for higher education. Sometimes the preferred destinations, shift based on political considerations. But what I see in terms of increasing attractiveness are curriculums that integrate work experience into the undergraduate education.
Right.
Parents want, obviously some type of better job prospects for the students. They want clarity. So you have certain universities that will provide these paid work experiences as part of the curriculum to students, and parents are increasingly being drawn to those types of universities.
Right. So any advice for the students who do not have traditional academic background, but they have unique talents?
Yeah, I think you should still, consider university. I think that with AI, the ability to think creatively and originally is going to be more valued than ever. You're going to see a shift in terms of where the demand is for college graduates. You have a lot of code, for example, 30% of code at Microsoft now being written by AI. But I think that you may be in a privileged position if you are a creative person and you can communicate, you can originate thought. Because that's something that AI still can't do.
That's very nice. Yeah. Amazing. So what's the true value of attending top universities? Since in your CV, there are 3 top universities. So in today's world, what's the place of it?
So I think it's all about the people that you're surrounded by.
Yeah.
You can have the same textbooks and the same courses, at one place versus another, but it's about your fellow students. It's about your professors. It's about that network you're part of forever.
Yeah.
That's what really stays with you is those connections. The knowledge you start to forget quite quickly after you finish your studies.
Yeah, right. Yeah, of course. And, I always say those colleges where Nobel laureate walked and they did experiments, of course, there has to be some effect there also.
Yes.
So there are now parents who are starting application first time. Would you want to say something about what should be the first step?
Yeah, be informed. Start early. Don't think it's too early to seek answers to the questions.
How early they should start?
Ideally, right before high school.
Okay.
Right? So we even have some gifted students that are in 7th and 8th grade. You have Hopkins Center for Talented Youth, which for 50 years has been providing programming to students as young as 2nd grade.
Yeah.
So especially if you have an ambitious, high-achieving young student, probably they're bored at school and they're not, satisfied with whatever is being offered academically there. So then you have to nurture that in other ways. But you should be informed, right? What do UK universities look for? What do Canadian universities offer? What do the top US universities offer? Well in advance, ideally in middle school, because even in middle school, certain choices are being made that lay the foundation academically for high school.
Right. Amazing. So right now, my audience mostly are moms, I'm a gynecologist.
Yes.
So any messages you want to give directly to them, parents watching?
So every year we host an Ivy Insider panel, our biggest event annually. Last year we had 400 attendees, and we're holding it again next Sunday, May 18th. We will feature a panel of high-achieving UAE students that got into Columbia, Penn, Brown, the top universities, and we'll even feature students who got into top UK, Canadian, and European universities for the first time. So if you have children that are interested in studying abroad, come to the event. You can hear it not just from me and my colleagues, but from the students who went through this journey successfully, who share their experiences, their journeys very honestly, not just the achievements, but also the setbacks and the challenges they face. So I'd say if you'd like to come to that event, come to haleeducation.com, HALE education.com, register. We hope to see you there, because when you hear directly from the students that completed the journey successfully, there's no greater guide than them.
And that recording will be available also in your YouTube channel.
Yes, it will.
So in my description, I'll be putting all the contact details of Hale and your team, yeah? So we have a tradition. You brought so much information for my patients, my audience. So this goes with you. There's a thank there, and there's a QR code where people can scan and they can go to see our podcast. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Dr. Bush. It was a privilege and a pleasure.